On the news, South Africa denies xenophobic attacks on Nigerians. The FCC arrests cybercrime suspect on FBI list. Hello and welcome to News Now. I am Fidelia Aguncha. South Africa has denied reports of xenophobic attacks in the country. South African High Commissioner to Nigeria, Bobby Monroe, at a press conference with Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Ministry headed by Geoffrey Onyema, said the attacks in his country were not targeted at Nigerians. He described the attacks as sporadic acts of violence, adding that businesses belonging to other South Africans were also affected in the violence. The federal government had earlier on Monday summoned South Africa over the recent xenophobic attacks on Nigerians in the country.
The government has issued a statement, and the head of mission will himself give you information on that. Arrests have been made, but for us, Nigerian government, we are determined that we should not have any recurrence of this going forward. So we have to put in place, we must put in place, and we will put in place mechanisms to ensure that these do not recur. We've made very concrete proposals to the South African government today, and we believe that if those measures are implemented, we have a very, very good chance of ensuring that this does not recur. In the first place, we have to address the issue of compensation. There has to be accountability and there has to be responsibility for compensating all those Nigerians that have suffered loss. And we are going to absolutely push for that. And secondly, we believe that, but I will not go into that much detail on that, but that the two security forces, South African and Nigerian, we can have an arrangement where there will be cooperation on the ground in South Africa to arrest such events and occurrences.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has sent a special envoy to South Africa over the recent killing of Nigerians in the country. The President's Special Advisor on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, disclosed this in a statement released on Tuesday. According to the statement, President Buhari asked the convoy to convey his concerns to South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa and engage him on the killings. The envoy is expected to arrive in Pretoria latest on Thursday. Meanwhile, President Buhari will be visiting South Africa next month to meet with President Cyril Ramaphosa over the recent attacks on Nigerians. In a statement released on Tuesday, the president stated that Nigeria will not condone attacks on its citizens in South Africa. Still on security concerns, the police and other security operatives in Lagos have found an attempt by irate Nigerians to burn a ShopRite location in Lekki, Lagos State. The incident occurred on Tuesday afternoon at a ShopRite outlet by Jakonde bus stop. The attack is believed to be response to recent xenophobic attacks on Nigerians by South Africans. ShopRite is a South African-owned enterprise in Nigeria, and the attacks on Nigerian businesses is a part of a wider attack by South Africans on foreign-owned businesses, mainly those owned by other Africans in South Africa. The United Nations has urged the Nigerian government to prioritize security of lives and property, as well as restore confidence in the citizens. Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Summary and Arbitrary Executions, Agnes Callamard, said this while giving preliminary report on her findings on the general insecurity in the country. Addressing the recent face-off between the Islamic movement in Nigeria Kalamat says there is no sufficient evidence that the group was responsible for the death of the police officer and journalist, stressing that proscription of the group is preemptive.
Nigeria needs urgent action to end the pressure cooker of violence, which is claiming thousands of lives. According to my preliminary findings, Nigeria is a pressure cooker of internal conflict and generalized patterns of lack of accountability that must be addressed urgently, with issues like poverty and climate change adding to the crisis. Nigeria is currently confronting nationwide, regional and global pressures, which it was not experiencing to the same extent 15 years ago. I'm thinking here about population explosion, the increased number of people living in absolute poverty, climate change and desertification, and the increased proliferation of weapons. Altogether, these are reinforcing localized system of violence and strengthening, or certainly not weakening, countrywide patterns of violence and lack of accountability. I have tried to understand what's happening and why the targeting of that particular group, and why and how it has been declared unlawful. The government has argued that this group is weaponized and is anti-Nigeria and anti-government. I have asked for the evidence to it, which so far I have not received. So part of me tends to think that the declaration of IMN as an unlawful group is almost prospective in its nature. It's about what they think IMN could become rather than what IMN is.
A coalition of civil society groups have staged a protest against the award of a $9.6 billion fine against Nigeria by a UK court following a botched oil deal with PNID. Bearing placards with various inscriptions, the group marched to the British High Commission in Abuja, urging the UK government to intervene in the matter. Speaking at the UK Embassy, President of the group, Etuk Williams, and Secretary General Abubakar Ibrahim described the award as a travesty of justice and disrespect to the sovereignty of the Nigerian government.
We have come to register our displeasure about the $9.6 billion judgment in UK. Yes. It is unfortunate. Yes. It is uncalled for. Yes. We see this as a kangaroo judgment. Yes. Yes. That judgment cannot stand. Yes. That judgment cannot stand. Yes. That judgment will inflict pain on over 200 million Nigerian people. Yes. Yes. We cannot take that. We cannot take that. We are ready to occupy this place for another 1 week. That the $9.6 billion judgment, that is in Nigerian currency, 3.5 million naira.
The company
trillion rather. That is much.
That company must be investigated.
That is much. That is much. That is about 20% of our foreign reserve. Yes. We can't take it. Yes. We cannot take it.
We will not submit to second colonialism. Yes. We will not allow some entity to come and take over our Commonwealth.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has arrested 2 of the 77 Nigerians declared wanted by the Federal Bureau of Intelligence for Cybercrimes. Head EFCC Abuja Zonal Office, Aminu Aliu, said Chika Augustine and Godspire Nwachukwu were arrested in Abuja. He says a sum of $35,000 was recovered from the former. Addressing journalists in Abuja on Tuesday, Aliyu explained that the commission had, in collaboration with the FBI, arrested one other suspect on a different case in December last year, noting that he would be arraigned in court after the court vacation. According to him, from January 2019 to date, the Abuja Zonal Office has recorded 33 convictions, adding that collaborative operations with other zones resulted to about 293 arrests and over 465 cases which are currently under investigations. The Adamawa State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal, sitting in Yola, the Adamawa State capital, has dismissed a petition by the Action People's Party APP and its substituted candidate Bitrus Meda, challenging the victory of Umaru Fintiri as governor of the state. The APP and Bitrus Meda had asked the tribunal to nullify the election because they were excluded unlawfully from the polls. Delivering judgment on the petition, the tribunal said it could not grant the prayer of the petitioners because they failed to give valid proof of their claim of unlawful exclusion. The Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) had presented the name Rukaya Audu as the APP candidate for the last governorship election because although Rukaya Audu, who was the original candidate, had announced intention to withdraw from the poll, she did so only verbally. Chairman of the Governorship Election Petition Tribunal, Justice Adediran Adebara, who read the text of the judgment, says the petitioners had no valid case considering the issues around it. He therefore dismissed the petition and awarded legal costs of 1 million naira against the petitioners. Still on judicial matters, Justice Nicholas Owebo of the Federal High Court sitting in Ikoyi, Lagos State, has further adjourned ruling on the final forfeiture of Desiani Alison Madueke's jewelry and customized gold iPhone, all valued at $40 million, to September 10, 2019. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, had on July 5, 2019, secured interim forfeiture of 2,149 pieces of jewelry and a customized gold iPhone belonging to Madueke, a former Minister of Petroleum Resources. Meanwhile, the court had called on parties involved to show cause as to why the properties should not be finally forfeited to the federal government. Madueke, however, accused the commission of entering her apartment illegally and taking the items without any court order. The prosecution counsel, Rotimi Oyedepo, prayed the court for the final forfeiture of the jewelry since the respondent has failed to show how she acquired the mind-blowing items with illegitimate income. He also showed the court the search warrants detailing all the items recovered at the respondent's premise. Some sections of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway have been closed for repairs. The closure took place on Monday and will last till Thursday, October 31st. Following this closure, Lagos State Traffic Management has announced alternative routes for road users traveling in and out of the state. According to LASMA, the closure affects motorists moving inward towards Berger from Kara Bridge and those moving from Berger towards Kara Bridge. Travelers have now been advised to use the Lagos, Abeokuta and Ikorodu-Shagamu roads instead.
We have put in place virtually all the necessary work plan for us to be able to, undertake this assignment very successfully. What we have always been appealing to the public to do is to, maintain orderliness and comply, and cooperate with our officials so that when we are doing this, we can all do it together because it is a collective responsibility. Once there is orderliness, we can assure the entire motoring public that everything is going to go smooth and very perfectly.
Let me start by, again, reassuring Nigerians in general and Lagosians in particular that nobody is going to sleep on this section of this corridor because of this reconstruction exercise. We are fully prepared. As early as 6 a.m. today, we redeployed. We had already deployed because it is critical that we are here before the traffic starts building up. And that's exactly what we did. You could see the number of personnel here. And we are not on this business alone. We are being supported actively by our sister agencies. From the Lagos end, you could see men of LASMA. At the Ogun end, you could also see the men of Trace complementing.
At this point, we are moving traffic. Those who are leaving Lagos will be diverted to the extreme end, while we go to the other bridge, just before the Kara Bridge, we'll move traffic for those who are entering into Lagos. We'll move them into the inner corridor here, so that we can now secure the construction zone for construction work to begin immediately.
We'll take a break now and return with more stories. Don't go away.
In the last 3 years, we have built a multi-purpose center, which is the envy of all in our constituency. And I can tell you that the people who are living there are already enjoying it.
Guy, do you think what this man just said is true? See, I seriously doubt. I'm sure it's one of those their silly lies.
And wait, do you know there's a way to find out if these things he's saying is true or not? This is the Construct app. It gives people like us a sure way to track implementation of constituency projects. It gives valid and verified information on location of projects, amounts allocated, amount funded, the level of job done, and even the profiles of concerned legislators. You and I can post directly on this app.
Are you serious?
This is the go-to app if you want to know how our Commonwealth is being expanded by the government.
Wow. Let's even see if what this man said is true. Show me.
The Construct app is developed by Other Paper Nigeria with support from USAID and is available on both Google Play Store and Apple Store.
And it's true.
Of course, I told you.
Welcome back. Well, let's now join Anetta Felix for News in Business. Hello, Anetta.
Hello, Fidelia.
So, latest data from the NBS shows that Nigeria's GDP is receding. Tell us more about it.
That's very true. The National Bureau of Statistics on Tuesday revealed that the nation's economy grew more slowly in the second quarter of the year than it did in the first quarter. The report showed that the gross domestic product's growth rates fell to 1.94% in the second quarter from 2.10% in the first quarter of 2019. The NBS says during the quarter, aggregate GDP stood at 34.94 trillion naira in nominal terms, an increase of 13.83% over the performance in the second quarter of 2018 and 9.8% over the preceding quarter. Meanwhile, the Vice President's Senior Credit Officer, Sovereign Aluren Mali, says government revenue weakness remained a key credit challenge, adding that the country's balance sheet had deteriorated to a worrisome level. A downward trend in Nigeria's fiscal reforms is leading the country to a possible debt crisis. According to the Debt Management Office, the country's fiscal revenues undershot targets by at least 45% a year since 2015, with an expenditure of over 7 trillion naira. Financial expert Taiwo Oyedele is asking the federal government to revisit its tax collection policy, which is considered old and not fit for purpose. Adeshawa Odushaga now reports.
For a developing nation like Nigeria, which is in dire need of basic infrastructure, there is urgent need for an accelerated fiscal reform. With tax to GDP ratio at 6.1%, the country has the lowest tax collection rate, below the 15% required to fund adequate public services in sub-Saharan Africa.
Nigeria has a revenue crisis that if we don't address it, it's almost like a country going towards bankruptcy. And it's not limited to the federal government level alone. At state levels, for 2019, the budget of all the states comes to about 9 trillion naira. The revenue generated internally, which we call IGR, internally generated revenue last year, was about 1 trillion. The money they share from federal allocation from the federation account was 2.5 trillion. So look at it. States potentially could generate 1 trillion, share 2.5, which is 3.5 trillion. Yet they have a budget of 9 trillion. So you have this gap, fiscal gap of where would the money come from.
As a result of its low income, Nigeria's borrowing trend over the years has become worrisome, with its spending largely supported by funds sourced from domestic and international markets. Between 2015 and 2019, the country has experienced a 16 billion increase in its debt profile.
When you borrow, like government has tried to do in the past couple of years, even when you borrow in dollars, like the euro bond that they have issued, the rates are too high because the rest of the world consider Nigeria to be high risk. So they are demanding for 8%, 7% on a dollar loan. It's not, that's too high. Because when you then combine the impact of that high rate plus the exchange rate risk, it becomes a bit even higher than the rate you are paying on Naira borrowing. So Nigeria has to address, I don't think the fundamental issue is the borrowing. The fundamental issue is to do with the revenue profile.
Nigeria's tax collection ratio is one of the lowest in the world, and one of the many factors affecting this is tax evasion among citizens. Earnings have equally been subsequently reduced due to ambiguous taxing powers and age-long laws guiding tax collection.
The laws that created those taxes by themselves are old and not fit for purpose. Like the Stamp Duty Act is a law of 1939. The days when there were no internet banking, we don't have websites, and today we are trying to apply that law to online banking. So it's a round peg trying to fit into a square hole. It's going to create some damages. So we need to reform the legal framework all the way to our constitution, because our constitution, for example, spells out the taxing powers of the various levels of government, and that in itself creates an overlap. It creates ambiguity and therefore multiple taxation.
The problems of poor revenue generation have continually triggered a debt crisis in Nigeria. There are predictions that by 2024, the country's debt to GDP ratio may rise to 36%, with interest rates payments acquiring about 74.6% revenue in the absence of major revenue reforms. But an upgrade in the laws guiding tax collection system and more strict control on tax evasion may trigger a boost in tax earning, increase the country's revenue, and also resolve debt crisis. Adeshawa Dushoga, TV360, Lagos.
After this break, we'll be reviewing activities on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Do stay with us. Investors at the Nigerian Stock Exchange seem to be on a roll this week, with markets recording gains for the second straight day. The All-Share Index, which opened at 27,565 basis points, added 21 points today to close at 27,586, which is equivalent to a 0.08% increase. Also, the market capitalization of all listed equities kept up with the bullish trend, appreciating by about 10 billion naira to close today at 13.420 trillion naira. Taking a look at the top gainers, we see that MTN Nigeria shook off losses from previous sessions to top the prize gainers today with a 1.08% increase. It sold yesterday for 138.5 naira per share, and today they sold for 140 naira per share. Other top gainers are International Breweries PLC, which has soared above the 9 naira ceiling to sell today for 11 naira per share. And moving on, we see that EcoBank Transnational Incorporated has been on a steady rise since last week, and as well as the United Bank for Africa. Now going over now to our top losers, we see that Nestle Nigeria PLC, Dangote Flour, Union Bank of Nigeria and Sterling Bank of Nigeria are all on the downward trend. Sterling Nigeria PLC declined in value today, but they did sell more shares today than they did yesterday, with the volume of shares traded coming in at over 2 million shares after selling just merely 162,000 shares yesterday. Let's now see what the market summary, or how the market summary basically sums up the trading activities for today. Almost 300 million shares were sold at a value of over 3 billion naira in a total of 3,337 deals. And on the foreign scene, we see here with these figures that basically new tariffs, global economic troubles pulled down the Dow here to lose over 300 points, to close at 1.33%. Markets in London closed slightly lower today as well, pulling the FTSE down to 0.19%. But in Japan, investor sentiment in Asia is however positive, as activities of bargain hunters pulled the Nikkei up to 0.024%. And that's it from here, Fidelia.
Well, many thanks, Annetta, for that update. Let's now look at the foreign scene. No fewer than 200 migrants have been rescued while attempting to cross from North Africa to Spain on Monday, bringing the total number of people rescued in the Western Mediterranean to nearly 400 in less than 1 week. According to the Spanish Maritime Rescue Service, 73 people were rescued from 3 boats in the Strait of Gibraltar, among them 10 minors. Another 110 people were rescued from 5 boats in the Alboran Sea, which is a majority of whom will be taken to the port city of Malaga. Last Friday, at least 155 migrants rescued from sub-Saharan Africa crossed the border fence separating the Spanish overseas enclave of Ceuta from Morocco. It was the biggest attempt to cross the heavily guarded barrier in a year. And in sport, former Super Eagles coach Samson Siasia has lodged an appeal against his live ban from football by the world governing body FIFA. While speaking to newsmen, Siasia, through his associates, said his lawyers had submitted an appeal against the ban to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. On August 16, FIFA said in a statement that the adjudicatory chamber of its independent ethics committee found the 51-year-old Siasia guilty of having accepted that he will receive bribes in relation to manipulation of matches in violation of FIFA Code of Ethics. Siasia has reportedly been banned for life for the game. His case is the latest to emerge from FIFA's long-running investigation into activities of Singaporean Wilson Raj Perumal, whom FIFA has called a known match fixer. Perumal has admitted such activities in several interviews. And that's it on News Now. Many thanks for joining us. I am Fidelia Aguncha. Bye for now.